Hello, everyone. This is Stephen Wellman with HIMSS TV. I'm here today with Adam Turinas, who is the CEO and founder of Health Launchpad. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here, Steve.
Adam, you have a very interesting background. You started off as a digital agency person, and now you're a health tech entrepreneur. How does somebody make that transition, and what prompts it?
I started about 20 years in marketing on the agency side. In fact, I started on the tail end of the Mad Men days, which was fun, but thankfully sort of moved on to much more sort of substantial efforts when digital came along in the 90s. And so I spent most of my career in digital marketing. I kind of came to the end of my agency career about 10 years ago. I'd sort of decided it was time to move on. I'd been running one of the offices of a big digital agencies, and I needed a break, and I wanted to do something on my own, a bit more entrepreneurial. And so I had a little strategy consulting firm with a friend of mine, and we were doing strategic advice on communications, but primarily we were helping large organizations like McDonald's or Novartis. That was kind of the closest that we got to healthcare. And I was thinking about how to kind of expand it into other areas. And I was talking to a great friend of mine who's a physician called Stu, and Dr. Stu. And Dr. Stu and I had breakfast one day, and he said, this method that you've got for advising companies on how to improve the way that they communicate is so relevant to healthcare because of the issue, the physician alignment issue, the problem that healthcare systems have with the relationship with the medical staff, and particularly with communications and the role that they have. And so we kind of started consulting together to hospitals, to healthcare systems. And we were working with several healthcare systems in the Northeast. And about 6 months into it, we were thinking, asked ourselves that question, which people used to ask back in the somewhat early days of mobile apps, which is there an app for this? And we thought, there really isn't anything that sort of addressed the physician alignment issue. So we came up with the idea for what the app would look like. And I had a friend of mine design it. So it sort of looked, we had a PowerPoint, which was a really nice kind of pitch. And we took it to a guy called Joe Scott, who was then the CEO of Jersey City Medical Center. He then moved on to become the Chief Transformation Officer of RWJ. And Joe saw the pitch and he said, you build that, I'll buy it. And so we said, fine. So we went off and we hired some developers, and we had a minimum viable product, and we brought it back to Joe about 6 months later. And we said, okay, we did it. And he said, okay, I'll give you a group of doctors you can test it out with. And at the end of 2012, we piloted it with about 30 physicians, mostly in this emergency room, and they loved it. And as everybody knows, right, physicians are not exactly easy to please when it comes to technology. They don't like adopting. Most of them don't like adopting anything really new. And so the fact that there was this universal positive feedback was meaningful to us and meaningful to Joe Scott. And so we said, right, we're going to launch this thing. They became our first customer, and then we started. And the app originally was called Practice Unite. What we then found was that although we launched it as a physician alignment tool, what everybody really said was, yeah, that's great. But what we really need help with is secure texting. And we said, well, that's actually kind of like the underpinnings of it. And so what we found ourselves is we were actually in the very competitive secure texting market. So we were competing against Tiger Text and Volt and Vocera and Doc Halo, or Halo Communications, as I think they're called now. Things really took off. HIMSS played a very important role for us early on, because after about a year, the CFO of one of our clients said, our bottom line has improved, and we think you guys have a lot to do with it, because we can see that everybody's communicating much more effectively. And so we sat down with him, and he helped us in precise detail calculate that we were saving them $2 million a year. And so we then took that story and pitched that out to the trades, and the HIMSS, or rather Healthcare IT News, picked up on it. And we ended up being on the front page of Healthcare IT News for about 2 weeks, I think. with the story, which is secure messaging app saves hospital $2 million a day. And that put us on the map. And then the company took off. And then, you know, over time, we raised some money. We then were introduced to another company that actually fit really well with what we did, called Unify Health. So we put the two companies together. I ran the new combined entity. And then, you know, we kept on, you know, soldiering on, growing the business. And about, you know, 2018, 2019, you know, we could see that, you know, the market was getting much, much tougher, and that, you know, to be successful, we really needed to be part of a bigger organization. And so the board took the decision, and we fully supported, the rest of us fully supported it, that we really needed to put the company up for sale. And we eventually sold the company to HIMSS Healthcare. And so, you know, Unify Health, as it was at the end, still lives on and is being used by many facilities still across the country. So it was a happy accident that happened over a breakfast in a diner in New Jersey. And I changed from marketing back to healthcare. But just to kind of the epilogue on that story was, you know, I took a little bit of time off after the sale. And then I thought, you know, I really want to get back to my roots and my passion, which is marketing. And I love healthcare technology. And so I thought I'd put the two together. And so I started HIMSS about a year ago. And the focus of HIMSS is to help companies selling to healthcare, primarily technology companies, market more effectively. And so I launched the business a little over less than a year ago. And despite COVID, it's going really well.
Great story, amazing transformation of your career. And you touched a little bit about how HIMSS played a role in that first successful startup and then exit. How has HIMSS been important to you as a health tech entrepreneur?
I've worked in a lot of industries, and HIMSS is a bit special in that there aren't that many industries where there is an organization like HIMSS that kind of grew up with the industry really over the last 20, 25 years, what's, you know, that you've been in, and people who are in the industry have grown up with it. And so despite the fact that it's a massive organization, it still has that feeling of like, when you go to the HIMSS, to Global HIMSS Global rather, or to any of the regional events, you kind of go to see your old mates. And I've always loved that about that. Even, you know, and even early on, I felt that, you know, when I was a complete stranger, I knew nothing about healthcare when I first started this business, that actually I found it to be a pretty overwhelming, I mean, it's overwhelming, but it's nevertheless quite welcoming, and you know, made so many great friends and connections through HIMSS. And as I mentioned, I mean, you know, HIMSS Healthcare IT News helped put us on the map. I mean, we wouldn't have got anywhere had it not been for that article, and that then expanded. And then it's funny, I think when I think back to the life of that business, most of the sort of seminal moments, you know, our first coming out was actually at a regional HIMSS in New Jersey. I think when we were merging the two companies together, that was going on whilst I was at HIMSS. So I remember very much sort of, you know, walking away from the booth, sort of strolling around, sort of talking to the CFO and the chairman of the other company, trying to sort of finalize the deal. And then when we finally sold the company, I think the investment bankers and I were, and the chairman were wandering around HIMSS, primarily talking to HIMSS Healthcare, but there were other companies that were in play, and there were some other discussions going on. So HIMSS, you know, HIMSS has played an important role throughout the life of my times in health tech. The epilogue, the sort of the funny bit of it is that when I launched HIMSSLaunchpad, I actually purposely said I'm going to launch it at HIMSS Global. So I spent from January till March preparing, and I kept it quiet. And then I launched the company, I think it was on March 7th of last year. And literally 1 minute after I went live with it, the website and live on LinkedIn, etc., the notice came through about that HIMSS was cancelled. And, me and the rest of the world had to then sort of tap dance and figure out how we were going to get through this. But, it's been important. And, we recently reconnected through the awesome Ruth Stevens. And, it's just wonderful to be connected with HIMSS with what I'm trying to do now, because I think the communities, I've developed a community of health tech and health salespeople over the last year. And I think, that coming together with HIMSS in this partnership, I think is incredibly exciting for me. And I'm really looking forward to what we can do together.
Let's talk a little bit about your current startup, your current growth company, HIMSSLaunchpad. Why did you start HIMSSLaunchpad?
I found it was it was quite frustrating, of like having been a sort of a 20-year veteran in marketing, that I found healthcare to be the toughest market I've ever sold and marketed into. Like everybody says, oh, their market's really tough. Healthcare, and particularly healthcare technology, is really difficult. I learned a lot about how to use some of the more modern marketing techniques, and I, perfected a lot of that stuff. And there were other things that we were trying out towards the end before we sold the company. And so for me, it was sort of unfinished business, in that I felt like I've kind of got a lot of things right, and I could see the power of things like ABM really hitting the market. And so for me, it's the opportunity. What I saw the opportunity with HIMSSLaunchpad was to help people who've been in my shoes, or I've been in their shoes rather, who are struggling with how do you get the attention of the senior stakeholders in a healthcare organization, and then doing that using the most modern techniques in marketing. And it felt like there was a real need. The sort of happy accident that happened, despite the sort of horrors of last year, was that, everybody kind of went virtual, as we all know, right? And so, but because of that, you miss the connections. And I think a lot of people were really missing the connections of live in-person events like HIMSS, and the regional HIMSS, and as well as global. And so, purely by accident, I decided what I was going to do was start webinars like everybody else, but also start doing things like workshops with smaller groups. And so I used email, I used LinkedIn, and I found there was a real receptivity to it. So I was getting very high attendance to my webinars and very high participation. And I think what I realized was that, sure, they were coming for the content, but they were staying for the community. And I was like, this is interesting. And so what I've done is I've actually turned that into a formal community called Connect. And we have about 250 people who are part of it. And every month we'll have a networking event with some education. We do webinars as well every month. And, there's not a day that goes by when I don't talk to somebody from the Connect community. And I've got a lot that I'm planning on doing with that this year. But that kind of I don't think that without COVID, that would have happened, if it would, or not happened as quickly, because that was the need. So, as I thought about what HIMSSLaunchpad meant to my community, it's about connect, learn, grow. So it's connect with other people in your community. So meet your peers, learn, because it's about education. I believe my role, certainly this stage in my life, is to try and teach what I know or what I'm learning about now, but also create a forum for people to learn from each other. And then grow, because my business is a consulting business, and so my focus for my clients is to help them grow their business, and I'm doing that through strategy consulting and a lot of content marketing.
And let's talk a little bit about that community you've built. In particular, where do you see healthcare technology marketing going? What are the conversations you're having in this community about the new direction?
Well, that's really interesting. To a certain extent, it depends on what stage the company's at. But let's talk about, the sort of bigger organizations. So the bigger organizations are moving fast out of the sort of more tactical, traditional B2B techniques, which is very heavily email dependent. moving towards where business to business marketing going, which is ABM, account-based marketing. And I see that happening. And so, when I talk to clients, the conversation is not really, should I be doing ABM, account-based marketing? It's what stage they're at. And I would say that most people are in their early stage. In fact, one person I spoke to the other day said, well, I kind of think that we're doing ABM light because they're still experimenting. So most people are actually experimenting with that. And we as you know, we've done a bit of research on this, and actually that some of that has come out of it. But I think that there's a sort of a general recognition that that's where it's going. I also think that something that's different about healthcare than many other B2B sectors is it's very much a sales culture. And that's because, and that's for understandable reasons. It's because the sales cycles are so long, and they really are longer than in other industries. Relationships and the relationships that you form between the salesperson and those stakeholders are what brings the deal home. It's very hard to do at scale, but that's the nature of the beast. And so it is very much a sales culture. And so marketing, I felt like in healthcare technology has been very much marketing with a small m. And I think that the sense I'm getting is that ABM is becoming a way to modernize marketing in healthcare technology. But it's still very much, it's at the experimental stage, and it is lagging behind other industries.
All right. What do you hope to achieve through your partnership with us?
Again, it goes back to the root of this what I'm trying to do here, which is it's about giving back, right? Part of giving back, but also, I'm in business, so you give to get as well, and I'm just delighted to be able to take what I'm learning and bring it to the broader community, but equally, selfishly, I expect and I know that I'm going to learn as well. And I find that when I talk to, prospects or my clients or other people in my network, is they might be learning something from me or from other people in the community, but I'm always learning something from them. And so to me, the great thing about being part of HIMSS is about being part of that much bigger community, because HIMSS is the healthcare technology community. There's nothing that comes close to it. So that's the primary reason. I'm also, it's really exciting actually, having seen, I've only known HIMSS for 10 years, but actually seen the evolution. And I think it's very interesting seeing how HIMSS, the way that HIMSS is organized, the use of research and customer insights and how that's used in marketing, the shift away from being a print-based medium to being basically digitally led and insight led, and more of an ABM-like model. It's very interesting watching that happen. So I'm getting a lot out of this relationship with HIMSS in terms of understanding the way that you see the market going as well.
What can we expect from HIMSS and Health Launchpad as we kick off 2021?
Well, we're kicking off I hope, a very exciting educational program. And it's going to be in 6 parts. Part 1 is a piece of research that we conducted together right in the last few weeks of 2020, which is I think it may be the first or one of the only marketing surveys of healthcare technology. And so we're going to be presenting the results of that at the end of January. And that is the prologue for a 5-part educational series exclusively focused on account-based marketing. And it's going to go from the fundamentals. So for people who are kind of in that early stage or just exploring, or experimenting as well, it'll provide a strategic framework. And then we're going to get into the weeds. We're going to talk about targeting. We're going to talk about engagement. We're going to put together a panel. We're putting together a panel of ABM marketing all-stars, so that people are actually can share what they're learning from, doing it for several years now. And then we're going to finish off with a look at some of the technologies that people should be considering and what's out there in the future. But it all starts at the end of January with the findings from the research. And I've been, looking at those findings over the last few days. It's really fascinating. I'm really excited about this piece of research.
Great. And then one final question for you, Adam. If there's one word that describes the role of the healthcare technology marketer in 2021, what is that word?
One word. I hope it's instigator.
All right.
And the reason why I say that, actually might be a dangerous word right now, but I mean that in terms of an instigator of change. Because healthcare marketing does need to change. I think that, I certainly hope that, together with HIMSS, that what we can do is help, so the up and coming marketing and revenue growth leaders can change up the way that they market. And I think that that's the primary role that I want to see them. Change agent. How about that? 2 words.
We'll give you 2 words. We'll give you a second word for free. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Adam. We've been here today with Adam Turina, CEO and founder, HIMSS Launchpad. Thank you for watching.